Here we go. Thanks. Welcome, everybody. So tonight's topic is We Rise, and I'm going to take a little leeway with the title that we had first suggested and refer to it as Taking Bold Steps to Meet This Moment, Community, Resiliency, and Vision. For the past nearly 35 years, individuals and organizations have held in common a vision for justice and peace in Wisconsin. Originating as an anti-war organization, the membership of WNPJ has morphed into a much larger network, including environmental, prison, and immigrant reform and support. Mutual aid groups, abolitionists, Palestinian freedom fighters, indigenous treaty rights, and even rights of nature organizations are coming to the table. The ways that we have shown up for one another and for justice and peace have and will continue to change as we learn from one another and allow each voice to be heard. So tonight, I wanted to approach this, and I've invited voices of activists throughout the state to address a few questions that I think are facing us now. So first, I'd like the panel to introduce themselves, and they are Ajak Johnson, Erika Bach, Paul DeMain, and Dena Jackson. So you guys can
Someone should jump in and do it. Bonjour. My name is Paul DeMain in English, or Skabewis in the Ojibwe language. I live on the Lakota Reservation and about half-time up on Madeline Island, and have been active in politics and environmental issues and a little bit of everything most of my life. Miigwech for having me.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. And I saw Ajak is here somewhere, but you need to put your video on, darling, so we can see you.
Hi, I was getting the Ajak costume on. Don't mind me. I have a second face that I wear. I'm Ajak. I am out of Milwaukee. I help run the group Badger Collective out of Madison, working on mass mobilization, we just picked up a new initiative to prevent and stop state violence, whether that's through ICE or the National Guard or whatever. I move people. Sometimes people move me. I love cooking. I love being at peace. And unfortunately, I drive way too much. I'll pass it off to the next person. Sorry, that was kind of...
No, that's okay. Don't go away, though, because we're going to be asking questions. And is Erika on yet? Yeah, Erika, can you introduce yourself and be on? You might have to be on video. I don't know if we can do this, but go ahead, Erika. There we go.
Hi, folks. Trying to get in with technology. So good to be with you. What an honor to follow Mr. DeMain and Ajak Johnson. Thank you for having me. Honored to be a support to the WNPJ network and to be with you all. Activist is a really big title. I don't know that any of us will fully ever be able to step into that, but grateful to be among so many powerful freedom fighters and people who believe in collective liberation, and here with you all in solidarity.
Cool.
Looking forward to our conversation tonight.
All right. And Dena, are you able to join us? All right. I don't know if she's going to be able to or not. If you are, you can jump in when we start asking the questions. So yeah, I thought I'd love to just hear your perspectives on some things. So I made a list of questions, and I think I sent them off to you. Of course, I've changed them a little bit now. But I wanted to start out with just a real basic one, like what is community to you? Because I think, well, I'm not going to tell you what I think. What does community mean to you, or how does it manifest, or anybody? Go for it, Paul.
When I look at a community, I see a whole variety of things from social to political to economic business matters, and a community is seeing all those things come together on occasion, whether it's in song or dance or artwork or expression or simply breaking bread at a meal. I see community as functioning in a good way for the benefit of the entire community.
Mm. I can sign on to that. And anybody else? Ajak?
Yeah, I guess I've been in a lot of different environments where I've been asked this question, and my response is always the community is a place to fail, right? Community is the place to eat all that dirt and learn all of your lessons, because I think that what I tend to see in community is connection, right? And you can find connection from different places. That's kind of the cool thing about community. It's overlap of a bunch of things. But community is where you have eyes on other people and other people have eyes on you. And maybe there are traditions that are a part of that community, or behaviors that are a part of that community, or different locations that are a part of that community. But at the end of the day, it's always a place where you can go back to after everything falls apart, right? Or after everything goes well, right? But I think that there are less places that aren't community where you can go back to after difficult times and see the same way and feel the same comfort and be able to let that exhale go, close those eyes, let that mind turn off and just be taken care of. So when I really feel like I'm in community, that's the place where I feel like I can go after I fail. That's the place where I know I am when other people can come to me after they fail too. So it's kind of a, it's an alternative way to look at it. But I always think when I think of community, I think of failure because it's the place where we grow.
Hmm. All right. Erika?
So this struck me for the duality of this community. I love the positivity, right? We're starting the week off, and perhaps some of us are kind of riding the high of being in a form of community from this weekend, from No Kings rallies, and I think that that's part of the community that can be. That we all showed up in our different ways. Resistance takes many forms. Some of us were not physically present, and others of whom organized in our areas. And it really runs that whole gamut. I also look at that as a type of community, though, that we don't always get to choose. And Ajak, thank you for that really touching part about having a place to come back to, because for many of us, whether that's, being kicked off of sacred tribal lands, or that's having homes demolished when people are being, killed daily, that sometimes community is also what we build of it beyond a physical space or place or time. And so then what that looks like as a thought community, what that looks like as a group of people who, much like WNPJ, care about the same things. What kind of community are we building even in real time when there isn't one that has looked like this before? None of us have ever been in this exact moment in place and time before. And so that's the part of community that seems so positive and hopeful for me, is what we can build even when we don't know, the ground that we're standing on.
Very good. Yes.
Like,
Oh, excellent.
call that the imaginary soon-to-be community.
Yes. Let's keep going here. All right. So my next question is a little more difficult, maybe not. What does diversity look like?
Are we going to rotate on this on a regular basis or just jump in?
However you want.
I wanted to jump in a little bit earlier because I thought there were some good things about community being said, and that is it's a place that I feel safe. It's a place that I feel people who, even when they have opposing ideas and thoughts and opinions, I still feel safe, that I still have my back taken care of, that there are community people there who somehow understand me enough, see me working enough that some of these little differences are just little differences, and we've got a bigger picture. Diversity is something that I've worked on for years. And in 1994, we brought 7,000 journalists of color together in Atlanta, Georgia, from all over the world. And 2 years later, or 4 years later, in Seattle, Washington, we brought 9,000 people together because we opened it up even further and said, just about anyone in the world could come here, even disenfranchised white guys who feel like they're lonely in the world nowadays. But I think when I think of diversity, I think of it on a business model, and that is that I feel comfortable when I see diversity in restaurants, in stores, in my community doing business. It attracts me into those places where you're not welcome or you don't have diversity. People of color will stay away. So it's an economic status, economic position, as well as all the areas. I mean, I worked most of my life trying to integrate myself into the Democratic Party in one way or another, trying to fit. But to be able to see the growth of the Democratic Party in terms of inclusivity was great to see. It was great to see it on the Republican ticket when it began as well a little bit, because I've always said we need people from our community integrated into all these elements of society so that we have those diverse opinions.
Okay. Anybody else? It's like popcorn. Anybody else want to pop up there?
I want to shout out the network because I think there's a lot of diversity amongst us. You highlighted it in your intro, Dena. I mean, really covering so many bases that we'll talk about throughout the week, but that each organization does throughout the year. Really, the environment, our faith communities, our desire to not fund wars in other places or at home. There's so much to cover, but I appreciate that as a body we come together under that umbrella. So very brief diversity right here where we bloom it.
Yeah.
I don't have a strong answer for this one, but what I will say, there's a quote from Jimmy Carter about how America is not a melting pot, but a beautiful mosaic. And when I think of diversity, I think of the mosaic. And if any of you have ever done like glass mosaics before, something you'll know, well, there's a few things, First off, nothing fits. Nothing ever fits, right? And sometimes it can be really frustrating. And you know that you've got diversity in thought when things get frustrating and things don't fit, right? But at the end of the day, I mean, just because you have diversity doesn't mean it's easy, right? So, I mean, there's that development, but you know you've got diversity in thought when things don't fit. Another thing about glass mosaics is sometimes they're really rigid, sometimes they're really smooth, sometimes they make those wavy pieces of glass. So everything's a little bit different. And everything has a little bit more or less depth. And finally, there's the color, right? All of the different colors. And if you've really got diversity, you're never going to find the color that's quite right. And I'm not talking about skin color, although I'm sure some people would. But, like something that I find a lot in my work and in my life is that sometimes I find the people who do fit and the people that are right for the moment. And I never imagined they would have been those people, right? Like, I mean, I've got like 4 different people at the top of my mind from Saturday's demonstration, right? And for those of you who don't have the context, I am a primary organizer in like the big demonstrations in Madison. So yesterday I led us up East Washington for No Kings, and we had a potential explosives threat, right? And there were just people who I was able to delegate, and gosh, I hope I get to meet those people again, but I never would have expected that in that moment, in that place and time. But we had, I would say, a diverse team in the way that we thought, and it just surprised me, like the colors and textures and such.
And isn't that the basis for a diversity, to have all those different resources that are available that people bring to the table? When I was in Governor Anthony S. Earle's administration, I was one of the youngest cabinet members in Madison, Wisconsin, and one of my first tasks in opening up a 4-year term was to seat people that we knew on something like 148 different boards, commissions, and different entities that had been developed, and we needed people that represented our administration on that. And I think I was able to find something like 92 indigenous people to fill those seats, including on the Wisconsin State Banking Commission, and all the other ones like the Subcommittee on Alcohol and Drug Abuse and so forth. But we were able to fill out categories and finding people of expertise in all those areas from the indigenous community. And to some extent, it was eye-opening to me, as much as I was a reporter in Indian country and was exposed to a lot, to be able to reach into the community and find people that had all these little pieces of knowledge and could sit on the state agriculture board and the state banking commission and so forth and contribute, so that we had a voice of everybody at the table, all the resources, all the capacity and skills to be able to get the job done right, and not to let out communities of color and other disadvantaged entities.
Yeah, so I would assume that we all agree that diversity is a good thing. Yes, okay, I didn't think that was going to be a hard one. So moving forward as one body, there's a lot to be said about coalition work and networking in general. How do we move as one body while maintaining individual understandings and beliefs? And I say that having experienced in different coalitions, a certain understanding coming from, say, Christian elements, to people who are coming from a philosophical position or a political position that would be, say, communistic, where they don't necessarily agree with one another. But how do you guys, how do you navigate that? Do you? You're muted, Paul.
I'm trying to give the lead over to someone there.
Well, I'll tell you what's been effective for me. I fight for things, not against things. It's I tend to get a lot of emails and a lot of calls from a lot of different people who want to be involved. And sometimes there's a really productive conversations and sometimes there's aren't. We all could never want to go to the same place, right? We all have a slightly different vision of what tomorrow looks like, but if you can set a goal, and maybe it's really broad or maybe it's really narrow, right? But I mean, like, when you move into this idea of fighting against something, then you start arguing about what's going to work. You start arguing about timing. You start arguing about the messaging. You start arguing about whether or not it's worth it. If this will pass, should we have these people? Should we not have these people? The worst is these people are getting in the way, right? Whereas if you set the goal, everyone can step up to the certain totem post because you're building, right? And some people can do the trim and some people can do the pillars and some people can start on the foundation. So I mean, as far as like, I've always had this blanket rule of I work with people who want to work with me, but at the end of the day, I don't think I've ever been able to walk up and sell to someone the idea of, hey, let's fight against this thing. And if I ever have had to, I've usually had them around just for a few weeks.
Okay. Clear. Working towards something.
Well, and one of the things that I've seen develop here in the Chequamegon Bay Area recently as this Ellie and Alex out of Washburn, Wisconsin, have put together what they call the neighborhood union. And it really is just a lot of neighbors getting together on a regular basis. I think they get together on a monthly basis now with a potluck. It's interdenominational. They've had people from all political spectrums come in to discuss issues. So, really bringing people together in a whole new forum. I mean, Washburn's got churches, Washburn's got Kiwanis clubs, it's got all kinds of organizations. But this neighbors union was really born out of community issues and politics at the local community level, the not for sale, which had to do with drinking water. We come from an area where we are a water-based economy, and so there's a lot of concern about the environment and resources in our area, and a lot of the discussion is around that. But I thought that some of the best things I saw was, again, that diversity of voices, even if you don't have a lot of diversity of ethnicity in Washburn, Wisconsin, you have a lot of diversity between farm and rural ag and other elements in the community there. And I thought they were really doing well at bringing together people. And it's interesting how you draw people. I mean, I've been involved in this a long time and have as well had a lot of conversations with people who want to volunteer, but it's really difficult to get people involved in the long run. So many people just have ordinary lives. They just want to live kind of a quiet existence in society. They want to go about their business. Yes, they vote every other year and all these things, but to get them to give up the family or to give up a weekend, especially like this last weekend, 8.2 million or more people gave up this weekend in a couple of hours to make a statement. And that is considerable. That is considerable to do that, to see the number of people who are showing up for Hayward, Wisconsin to have 800 to 1,000 people show up was just phenomenal. But out of that builds what we need next in terms of building that diversity in community. Everyone got together. It's being used as a networking tool. We've taken phone numbers and emails, and we want the conversation to continue, even when there's dispute on issues. I've had plenty of conversations, and we could get to a point where someone didn't disagree with a particular policy, but they can see that things are not well in the overall. So they're with us in regards to standing up to this administration at this point. So.
Mm. All right, Erika, do you want to
Sure. I mean, I only though for the purpose of amplifying what I just heard. Forgive me if this sounds really too conceptual as opposed to individual and boots on the ground. I think about it in terms of almost picture like the constellations. Any one of us from our particular vantage point, if you have the ability and the privilege of sight, you might look out tonight and you're going to see something different in each of our skies, right? If you live in parts of the state that are very heavily polluted by the F-35s, or you live in parts of the state where you have access to clean, beautiful, clear night air, or you live in a very populated city and you're seeing your view kind of blocked by maybe the tallest building, or maybe it's not safe to be outside in your neighborhood at dark. And so how we move as one is to understand that there's this big expansive sky, right, that came before us and will exist after us, and that we have all of these different perspectives. But if we can shift or move or maybe get to a rooftop or get away from the smog, that there is still this same thing that kind of unifies us, which is and whether that's Mother Earth or nature or peace or whatever that is. Tonight, it might be part of Halley's Comet that you see, that there is something that diversity can exist and we can be part of the greater whole.
Well, thank you guys. You're definitely not disappointing me. And I'm looking at this, and the questions I came up with are not just for your personal positions, although they are, but it's also to help us as a network. How can we I think we've all learned the being in separate silos. We've been taught that, it's been used to hold us back. And I think we're emerging from that, which is what was shown in that beautiful video this earlier that we showed, that we're starting to hear more voices and be part of the network. And I personally applaud that. I think it's critical. But I think sometimes there's how can we move to that? So the question I came up with was, have we and how do we do the self-examination needed to accept our diversity? How do we feel about trans people, Palestinians, immigrants, prisoners, indigenous, blacks, whites, Christians, and non, and anyone that we deem as the other? You know, how have you, because I know it's come up. I guess apparently it came up over the weekend that people didn't want the Palestinian flag at some of the rallies. They didn't believe that it was appropriate, whatever that means. And how do we do it in ourselves? Because to me, you cannot talk about these things until you're clear inside yourself. But then once that's true, how do we go about helping others? So I'll leave that open.
At our rally, we allowed the one Palestinian flag that came there. Nobody said anything about it. Um, I would have hated to have seen it dominate the issue because there's so many other issues. But I just turned 70 years old last week, and I was telling myself that I have to examine a lot of my own feelings on a regular basis. I grew up in Wausau, Wisconsin. I was in an adopted home. I'm an indigenous person in an all-white family in basically an all-white community. And I was treated like that at times with great kindness, but a great deal of racism as well in my life. But I have to challenge myself about how I feel about some of these individual feelings. And sometimes you really have to dwell into the community to find out. When we went up into the Pinocchios to fight a mining operation near Hurley, Wisconsin, and made fun of the history of prostitutes in that community, an old lady came up to me and says, there are women in Hurley who sent their children to college on what they did as a living. And they had to make decisions that you are judging in a certain way, so tone it down. You have to go into sometimes those communities and understand the mindset of those people, and that takes a lot of effort to sit there. I'm used to talking and unloading for a half hour on a quarter and going on and on. It's taken a lot of constraint in my life to sit back and to listen people and to come part way in the argument and understand that there's times when people just don't know. Number one, there's a news desert in a lot of places. A lot of people are trying to avoid the news because it's so horrible lately that they don't want to watch it. But at the same time, there are people in communities that are totally isolated from the issues that I have to deal with on a regular basis in a tribal community next to a non-Indian city here that probably has less understanding than people in Germany who study American Indians. And so it's a dynamic that is frustrating and there are times when I have anger and I have to walk away from that because it has to be what's best for everybody in the long run. And if I have to accommodate some of that, I need to come part way as well, or at least tolerate and say, look, I have to come to an understanding with this in my mind. So, and that has to do with race relationships and transgender and everything else. I have a granddaughter that is transgender, and I had to really think about how I felt about that and how I had to adjust my feelings to come to understanding where she was in this situation. And it's taken a little while to do that.
Honest answer, thank you. Anybody else on the panel? I'm so happy I was able to get you guys. Either of you, Erika or Ajak?
I'd love to defer to Ajak, of course.
You know, I guess I don't struggle with it that much. And that kind of sounds like a crappy answer, but I mean, I guess I've had moments in my life where I've either experienced a lot of pain or been around people who've experienced a lot of pain. And it was miserable. And when I think of like someone else experiencing even a fraction of it, that I carry that with me a whole lot. And I am lucky enough to have grown up in an environment where I have been able to flex the logical bones in my mind, the logical muscles in my mind, where like mass dehumanization is not something that can click in my mind, because at the end of the day, it's always they're people, right? They feel like me, they cry like me, they cheer like me, they burn dinner like I do, right? Like they stub their toes like I do, right? And yeah, and I will say, like, I always just kind of feel a little bad, like knowing that there are so many corners of the earth that we know about and so many that we don't, where perhaps someone's going to sleep to the sound of shells, or I mean, even thinking about the fact, we're about to head into winter and there's about to be a lot of people who are, sleeping under bridges. I did not have enough layers earlier and I put another coat on, on top of this thing, like, and I can't imagine having to like sleep in that. Well, I can, but, and it's miserable, So, I mean, I can't, like, I think that I definitely have like more like restricted opinions on how we deal with things like that. Like my thing with healthcare, yes, we could make healthcare free. We could also go up to Pfizer and say, listen, you're not allowed to charge the US government $600 for a pill that costs 20 cents to make. Then we'll talk about paying for the healthcare, right? But like, no, I guess I just like, I'm hardly ever in a position. I can't think of the last time I was in a position where I really had to challenge myself to feel as someone else does, or challenge myself to see that different perspective, or challenge myself to be accepting of the way that people live, just because my mind races through, why are they here? How did they get here? Are they happy here? Right? I mean, if they are, who am I to judge? Right? And if they're not, what can I do to help? So yeah, it's an odd one for me.
No, thank you. Oh, good. Does come back to our humanity at the end of the day. Erika, do you want to say anything on this one? Are you there, or did you freeze up? Erika, looks like you might have. So we'll keep going here. So Yeah, people are responding in the chat that they're appreciating you guys. I know I am. And this to me is so critical. You know, we don't get to spend time like this hearing from one another. You know, we have people representing cities, Madison, Milwaukee, and a couple of us living up in the hinterlands here. And so important. It's so important to have this diversity represented, and we get to do this. And I personally am hoping that we do it more and more. Um, if we can travel to when Paul and Madeline Island, when they're doing something or whatever, wherever we can go. I know tonight in Milwaukee, there's an emergency protest again for Palestine, you know, and I would love to be everywhere and can't quite do it anymore because I turned that magical 72, Paul, this year. A little older than you, actually. But are we ready to fight? Are we ready? Can we bring ourselves to the battle now for true reparations, for abolition? Do we even understand that, the meaning and the necessity for that? Do we agree on that? Treaty and environmental rights. Are we ready for that? And if not, what's standing in our way? And that can be individual or collective. Go.
No,
Oh,
no,
no, just no, no, we're not ready. Okay,
no.
that was easy. Erica has her hand up.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I mean, that's very real. That's a completely legitimate answer. And I'm gonna agree. No, but we can get there. I think if we, again, really take the lead from Black and brown folks, if we listen to the people most impacted, for me, if it makes me uncomfortable, and this, Dina, this kind of goes back to the last question. If it makes me uncomfortable, I'm not suggesting that any of us purposely like live in our traumas or, you know, revisit in from a harm reduction model, right? Like that we not go backward, but also to be able to sit with that and say, okay, what is that makes me uncomfortable? I'm not ready because of, you know, white supremacy that still shows up in my life, or capitalism that still shows up in my life. I mean, right, the lights are on behind me, right? Like there's some things that are still very much a part of each of our existences. But what I really loved about tonight's theme and what we're embarking on is this idea of like really getting to the root of things. If I can sit with it long enough to figure out why it's uncomfortable, why I'm not ready, and why that's not really doesn't feel good to say, then there's some growth. And you know, we can plant the seeds now when they can bloom in the spring kind of concept here, where no, we're not ready, but the sooner that we can be accountable about that and like just name it. Nope. There's some what they call transformational accountability there. And that's the part that I want to try to lean into. Get to the root, look at why it is that way, and then work with all of you wonderful people to figure out how to make it different.
Did you want to add to that? Thank you, by the way. Did you want to add to that, Ajak, or that no, or are you just like a firm no?
I think that No Kings proves to me that we're not ready. I mean, the simple truth is, I could take a walk. So I can see Lake Michigan out my window. You can't, it's dark, but I can. And I could take 15, 20-minute walk and be in a part of town where every house on the block has lead pipes. Lead pipes. People are drinking cancer. People are eating cancer. Like actual cancer, right? And we all know it. Like Milwaukee's lead pipes are not a secret. And like the fact that Milwaukee had what, 15, 17,000 people out yesterday, and I wasn't there, I was in Madison, and maybe I'm not being generous, but I'm willing to bet that it didn't come up once. Meanwhile, we have one of the worst prison systems in the nation. One of the worst. And our governor cut out a line from our budget this year about wanting to fix it. Now, to be fair, he said it shouldn't be in there if we don't have a plan. But at the end of the day, now it's not in there at all. And so, yeah, I just really have a hard time with the idea that, you know, some people in my beautiful city, which I love very much, with beautiful people who I love very much, but some of those beautiful people were looking at a BuzzFeed article for the 25 funniest things to put on a protest poster on Friday night. And some people were drinking literal cancer. And I'm willing to bet you that the people drinking cancer were thinking about the people who were making the signs, but not the other way around. So I don't think we're ready. And I think one of the faults in our advocacy that sometimes makes us not as successful as we might want to be is the idea that we've got to get people ready. Like I always noticed such a difference in the people who could stand there and just talk to me for 30 minutes, an hour about everything that's wrong with the world, right? And that's not saying that I don't like the complaining or that I do like the complaining. It's just that I think that there's so much more perspective that, and when you see that fire lights up inside of you, that's like, must do something, right? So maybe I'm a little pessimistic, but I have a hard time looking at the world that I live in and thinking that we're ready, I mean, people showed up yesterday, you know, we had explosives threats in Madison and people were mad at me because I wasn't letting the march go forward. You know, then we finally got to the Capitol after taking a detour and people started yelling at my marshals about the fact that we weren't marching, right? So, I mean, some people are literally being tortured less than 100 miles away. Some people are literally drinking and eating cancer less than 100 miles away. Some people are, you know, like living in food deserts, right? If they're even eating, if they're even living in a shelter. And you want to yell at one of my marshals about like not being allowed to move, you know? So yeah, no, I don't think we're ready. And I do have hope we can get there. And I do have hope that we can get there quickly. But no, I don't think we're ready.
And I can't disagree with that in some ways, but what I find interesting is that there seems to be some people who are almost naturally neutral to the world and conversational and just continue rolling. They're friendly to everyone. They get along with everyone. I wish we could birth more of those kinds of people. But Ajak, it's like how I get up in the morning and I see some of these things and I agree with you and it creates a sense of anger in me. There's times literally when I you know, without all the constraint of the world and all the counseling I did as a teenager and everything else, would have acted out in different ways by now. My anger from seeing people dragged and families being broken up and the fact that there are still people drinking lead lace cancer water in Milwaukee when we've been fighting bad pipes for 25, 30, or 40 years now since we've known about it. These things frustrate me. And I just wonder sometimes how people like you and other people that are here, I mean, you got people who could be somewhere else tonight listening in on something, trying to find some hope, trying to find some feeling, trying to feel how to go on at a time when there are literally other people who say, I give up. I can't deal with the tension. I can't deal with the anxiety. Thinking about going out to standing on the corner, I can't do that. And there are people who can't get themselves to do that as well. You know, I came from ball drum dance ceremonies, 3 days of celebration of food, dance, music, and deep cultural norms in order to get out of this FUD I was getting into going into this and saying we just got to wake up another day, another day. Tomorrow's just another day. If we don't get too far in the future and don't hold on to the past too hard, we move forward. But how do we rejuvenate ourselves in this atmosphere to go on?
Mm. Critically important.
I hear your frustration. I can see how it feels to you.
Yeah, but then she always ends with that hope, which is what I love actually about all of you. Because, you know, if to pretend to just be Pollyanna about where we are would be a mistake. You know, we need to see. I needed to see that video of the woman screaming at the guy with the Palestinian flag. I was like horrified that it happened, but it was like, yeah, there's so much healing that needs to happen and can happen. And I loved when Erika said, you know, it can happen quickly. I do believe that. You know, there's a saying about you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink, but you can salt his food. And I think our food is being heavily salted. And maybe it will attract enough. I mean, we don't need everybody to agree, but those of us who can, to step out of our silos, to step out of our different worlds and hear one another, see one another, communicate. I want to have, I mean, I live in a community by design, by intention. And I live in a community surrounded by people who wish I didn't live here. I can tell you that, and it's not a lie, it's the fact. But it doesn't change. It doesn't change me. I'm going to continue to be the human being that I am. And that's probably why I love this network so much. It's probably why I fight to bring voices in that are different. Because part of what's happening to us, part of the separation that we feel has been learned. We've been indoctrinated. And it's going to take an effort to unlearn it. It will, but it doesn't have to take long. I agree with Erika on that.
Okay,
So,
to be fair, Dena, I want to give credit where it's due. That also was Ajax, so I don't want to take any credit there. Sorry, just had to jump in and share that too.
oh, you guys are too kind to each other. You need a little more fight. No,
we're going to be kind to each other so we can fight the systems.
That's it. I love that. So really, I think what I'd like to do, because this is, if you guys are in agreement, it's gone really beautifully. And my last question was, in the midst of this great unraveling, what comes next? And I think that, you know, once you guys chime in, I'd like to open it up because we still have time where other people could also either ask questions or give their opinions or whatever. But before we do that, I want to read something that has really impacted me a lot most recently, although I've heard it many, many times. It's Martin Luther King letters from Birmingham jail, when he says, I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the Negro's great stumbling block in the stride toward freedom is not the white citizens counselor or the Ku Klux Klaner, but the white moderate who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice. And I'm going to leave it at that and ask you to chime in again in this moment.
I'm going to make this so brief because I really want to hear from Ajak and Paul. I think if we look at, again, the roots as, for those of us who are identified as white, if we really look at what we've been taught as far as individualism and a lack of connection beyond ourselves, it's really about, and this is not an original thought, this comes from women of color all across the ages, of building these habits of solidarity We're going to need to start to build more upon mutual aid. We're going to need to, if we want to have a general strike, we're going to need to take care of the current most impacted needs among us before we can declare, war on the government. Not that anyone's saying that. I got to be careful what I put out there, but this idea of like building habits of solidarity and really moving from the I to the we. This is something that communities of color, that Native and Indigenous communities have known for all time. And so, yes, every reiteration of movement and revolution has to stay with the times, but that is something that at the heart, I really hope that the majority of us, certainly as white people, really move from an I to a we. And I thank you all.
Yeah, thanks, Erika.
Well, I like that. I think in this time and place, the thing that inspires me is the family around me. And that's one of the things that community here on the Lakota Reservation gives us. I know that off reservation, a lot of the people I know don't seem to have the kind of roots that Indigenous people have. Their grandparents came, mom and dad came from Chicago, grandma and grandpa came from New York. They're moving around. They're not as attached. But that community that we have and we're building with family is what's become more important than ever before. Reaching out to my children, trying to make them understand what the atmosphere is in this community or in this country and what it means to their future, trying to make them feel safe, trying to go to those safe places in our community, which are the religious communities or the elderly feeding joint and those kinds of places, and engaging in people in dialogue that's very broad, while at the same time discussing today's issues. So, what comes next is trying to make sure that I have your back, and I'm hoping that you have my back. Looking out for those veterans, looking out for those people that aren't going to go have the SNAP program here in the near future. Time to fundraise, time to make sure that our communities are fed and clothed. If it gets to be that kind of a situation, we need to be prepared. So there's a lot that goes into it, but I do have hope for the future. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, yeah, pleasure. Ajak, anything from you?
I think that next comes darkness, then comes tomorrow, but next comes darkness. And we're always kind of on that loop, aren't we? The darkness, then the tomorrow, then when we're in the tomorrow, we're brewing the next darkness. And that's, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, inevitable. But what we can do during this next time, we need to get infrastructure in place to heal. And we need to do it quickly. And I mean, that's something I love about this group. That's something I love about so many of the member groups in this group. That whether it's intentional or not, there's venues being created to heal. And secondly, we need to get ready to build such an immovable machine that we can win this one. I do think that we can win this one. Even on a small level, I think that we could entirely stop ICE detentions in Wisconsin very reasonably, very quickly within the next 12 months. Is that going to happen? Who knows? We'll see what coordination looks like, right? But it's entirely possible. But it's not going to work if we don't build those spaces to heal. So first, we've got to build those spaces to heal. And it's a race against the clock. And I've been in races against the clock before. And as we work through this, we've got to make sure, like, no matter what our focus is, we're carrying those people with us. We're carrying the struggle in Palestine with us. We're carrying, Wisconsin's still not a Medicaid expansion state, right? So when we get to that, we get to that. But that we don't forget about those things, because like you can get over the river, sure, and that takes a lot of energy and it takes a lot of momentum. But at the end of the day, when you get to the other side, you've actually got to walk into that promised land, like Milk and honey doesn't do any good if you're still sticky afterwards. So I think that with the set of people that we've got and knowing how people tend to be, we will either jump the gun and arrange ourselves in a way where we can provide a beautiful future security, or we'll be forced to, and our work will speak for itself. But I think next is we need to prepare to see more of those headlines. We need to prepare to have more of those meetings, to have more of those heartbreaks. And the way that we prepare for that is we prepare to heal.
Amen, darling. Okay. Yeah. This has exceeded my hopes and expectations. I love you all dearly. And we recorded this first hour. I hope people are listening to this recording, and I hope that you realize the value of this network. I hope that you consider being on the board. We can have many more people on this board. We could have many more organizations on this organization because we're a skeleton crew. No one is paid. Well, maybe a little bit. Maybe Nadja maybe made a little bit of money on the video, but really, and we can keep doing it that way. No one's asking to be paid, but we need one another, and we need these voices, and this is our moment. So the rest of the week there'll be these videos, and different board members will be hosting it, and I encourage you to tell people to watch them. And this has been phenomenal, and to me it's a testament of who we are and what, and I don't mean just in the Wisconsin network, that too, but as human beings, who we are and what is possible. So at this point, I'm supposed to tell Vicki, you can shut the recording off and turn everybody open, and we can have a little discussion among us for a little bit. Thank you, everyone, for joining, and that's it.